Hello, everybody, and welcome to Theater Talk Live with my co-host, Michelle Saunders. How are you, Michelle?
I'm good. How's everyone doing?
Well, as well. Thank you.
Well, we have three wonderful playwrights, and I can't wait to get to talk to each one of you. So we've been on your website, and we've checked you out. So I'm going to read a little bit about Mike, you first, and then Melda, and then Mike. So, I'm sorry, then Howard. Mike Wiley is an acclaimed playwright and has spent the last decade in his mission to bring educational theater to young audiences and communities across the country. In the early days of his career, Wiley found that he had the theatrical resources to help students and the community. So he founded his own production company. A couple of plays that he did was Emmett, Teal, and Henry Box Brown. Also, he did a one-man play based on Tim Tyson's memoir, Blood Done Sign My Name. And you know I was there at the Raleigh Little Theater when y'all did it at Blood Done Sign My Name, Mike, so I was in the audience. Also, he wrote the Parchment Ensemble, contributing, celebrating the bravery of determination of freedom riders and risked their lives through the desegregation of the South and the bus rides, as we know. You are from University of North Carolina. I keep saying California, that's where I went. University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill with MFA. And we're going to get into a lot of your career as we talk. Michelle.
Yes, so I know that we have Miss Melda. We have learned, well, I have actually learned a lot about you. So I would like to know if you would give us, like the audience, some insight about Miss Melda.
Thank you, Miss Michelle.
You're so welcome.
Mother, author, playwright, assistant professor of English at a community college here in Chicago. And here in the south side of Chicago, as we say here, we make distinctions about where we're from. Okay. So I've been doing the writing game since about 9, really, believe it or not. More professionally, probably in the last maybe 10 years. And the teaching I've been doing since the early 90s. So what I do, but you know that, and then the playwriting probably in the last 10 years, the book writing probably a little longer than that. I do.
So when you started writing your books, did you ever think that with writing the books, it would then be on stage?
Well, I would hope so. From your lips to God's ears, the books have not made it on stage yet. The plays are just, the plays that I write are coming from my own from headlines, reality, and my own imagination. What you see on stage now.
Okay, got you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to Mike, and I'm sorry, why I keep getting you two guys? Howard, my friend Howard Kraft, man, me and you go back a long ways, man. Howard Kraft is also a poet, and he also appeared in Home is Where, the anthology, an anthology of African-American poets for the Carolinas. He wrote several plays, which I happen to see. Let me just make sure I don't get them wrong. Okay, one was The Miraculous and the Mundane. I saw that at Man Bite Dog. Okay. That was before they closed up. Also Freight, saw Freight. And then, of course, No Fear, Blues Long Gone by Nina Simone, which starred our friend Vanessa Rabin.
Yolanda Rabin.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because Howard's Kraft, I'm sorry, Ken.
Yolanda Rabin, she's a good friend of mine. I'm sorry.
Yes,
I got her
friend
name.
of mine. Yeah. And we brought that performance to Fayetteville State.
Right.
Yeah, we did. Awesome performance.
So before we get started, can you all talk a little bit about what the passing of John Lewis has meant to this country and meant to Black Lives Matter? Anybody can jump in.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll just say I was shocked, as I think many people were, and you know, we can't also forget that Reverend Vivian also lost his life as well. And so I've just been reading the posts that I see on social media and just can't forget that phrase, good trouble, necessary trouble. And I think it was so foreshadowing for what we're dealing with today. You know, he's a civil rights icon. We can't speak civil rights movement without mentioning John Lewis. So it's a setback for the whole country, you know, just not just Black race, but just the whole country, because he was such an advocate for human rights.
The conscience of the sentence of the conscience of the Congress. I'm sorry. Yeah, John Lewis's life. I mean, you know, he's just an icon. He's the best of us. He is the embodiment of forgiveness and nonviolence, and using it as a political strategy to create change. But Mike has actually dealt with John Lewis in his work in parts now, and so I know he has some really good insights as far as that, and we touched a little bit, although ours was a fictional piece, as you remember, the Wise Ones,
Right, Wise
they
Ones,
opened
yes.
in that play, yeah, which touches on some of the challenges that you know, the nonviolent struggle endured, or you know, was up against during that time. But it's a great loss for all of us, especially in, you know, these dark days of Palpatine Orange up there. It's really a big loss, but you know, we push on.
And Mike.
I think
I think it's poetic. It's poetic that C.T. Vivian and John Lewis pass within, you know, hours of each other, really, you know, and the fact that that both men are not only iconic in the civil rights movement, iconic in the clergy, iconic in the Black race here in America. John Lewis specifically, and his ability to forgive, his ability to see the men and the women who did what they did to him in the 50s, who did what they did to him in the 60s, and then here to see what people say about him, as Howard said, Palpatine, say about him, you know, still the wounds run deep, but somehow he always managed to rise above all of those things, which kind of made him an interesting person to always be able to write about and include in a couple of my plays, just because he was always such a force for good and looking for the beloved community in the way that he was always either seeking it, or perhaps he even believed that he had created a beloved community and was merely just always fighting the forces that were constantly trying to dismantle it. So we've got to ask ourselves at times, what's the beloved community that he was attempting to create, or had he already had a part in creating it, and now it's upon us to continue to fight against those that would be willing to disparage it, but not only disparage it, but tear it apart and tear it down.
Yeah, we have a fight that's on our hands right now with this current administration, and trying to take us back to the days way before before John Lewis was here. And speaking of Wise Ones, I was actually in the cast of Wise One in 2005 at University of North Carolina. Had to get that in. But anyway, you guys talk about your backgrounds a little bit. I'm gonna go around. Let's go with Howard first. Tell the audience a little bit about how you got where you are now.
Well, man, it's, you know, as I look back on it, it's hard to believe that, you know, it's been that long. It's about 20 years now, just about. from the time that I had my first play produced, which was The House of George. You know, I started as a poet and a fiction writer, and I knew very little of, I had know nothing about theater. But Karen Dakins Rock, who you know very well.
Yep, a friend of mine.
Yeah, my mentor, she started a contest at the university called the New Play Project. And I remember hearing it advertised on the radio. I was working and writing in this little cafe. It used to be on 9th Street. And I heard that advertisement, and I heard that they had the $250, you know, prize at the end of it. And I'd never written a play before, and probably only seen a couple, something like Antigone and something else I was forced to see in freshman year. But I was, so I heard the announcement, and so, but I did know the name August Wilson. Wasn't familiar with his work, I just knew that name. And so I went to the independent bookstore and bought every August Wilson play they had and read them and wrote off a knockoff. He could probably sue me to this day. Okay, that's a little bit offensive. That's the right there. All right, that's the piano lesson. And you know, Karen blessed me with the, you know, I won the contest.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started looking, you know, being realistic. I had a stack of rejections over here, and I had a $250 check over here. So then the universe said, "Guess what? You're a playwright now."
That's
so,
right.
Wow.
That was the first play, and you know, I've been very blessed. Everything I've written has been produced on some level since that day. So you know, so that's
good.
how I got started.
And Melda?
I wrote a play after President Obama's election.
Okay.
And so after he got elected, I had this idea about this Black man, President of the United States of America. And so I wrote a draft of what I thought would be a decent play about it. And so I joined, we have a Chicago dramatist here in Chicago, it's a theater here. And so they had something called a network playwright membership. And so you could join and get discounts off of playwriting classes and seeing some plays and things like that. So again, like Howard, I didn't have any formal playwriting experience. Now, my master's is in English, so that's writing, but not necessarily creative writing and playwriting. I took a class, but that was it. So had this idea, wrote it up, joined the Chicago Dramatist program, and I'm glad I did, because that's where I started taking the classes, if you will, to be a playwright. So I did something called a play in development or play in progress course. And so I got feedback. That was the first time I ever got feedback on something I had written. And so going through the whole revision process, and eventually I was allowed to give a stage reading of it at the theater. And I think that they really liked the play, told people about it. I met with some directors. They did a like I said, a directed version of it. It wasn't a production, just kind of like a stage reading that had like movement and blocking. And then from there, I just started to rely on connections and people that I had met previously who were in the theater world, and they would read it and they liked it. So I had my first production. I wrote that play in 2010, 2011, and I didn't get a production until 2017. However, I had a lot of readings. I went to the National Black Theater Festival in Winston-Salem. I had readings there, just networking and meeting people. And that's kind of where helped me to get where I am now. And I've written, since that play, I've written three more. And all of them are in rotations. So that's kind of how I got into the world of playwriting.
And Mike. And then Michelle, your question.
I kind of snuck in through the back door is what I did, because I'm an actor and I wanted to employ myself. I didn't want to wait for you know, somebody to give me the opportunity to act. I'm impatient, and I was always being cast as an actor that played multiple characters, and so I decided that I would put those talents to use in my own work. I was a fan of documentaries, and I mean, a huge fan of documentaries, and a fan of Anna DeBeer Smith, as well as Roger Gendry Smith and a number of others. And I thought, well, let me try my hand at this. And I did, and it's when, you know, it's worked out because, you know, I'm never going to reject myself for a role. So
Right.
it's all
You're a pretty good actor too.
I try my best.
That's why I call him Mike 3-Check Wiley, because he gonna
Right.
Like a Swiss Army knife is what I am.
Right. Okay. Michelle?
So it seems like everyone has a similar background at some point. And what I mean by that is you start out in one area and then you went completely to something else. So do you think that you may have any other hidden talents, or have you identified any of those? And it's like, hey, well, I didn't know I can do this as well. Let me, see what this is like. Just like, with you, with the teaching and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to take this course. So you know what I mean? So it's like, for each of you, have you discovered anything else, any other hidden talents in this journey?
Yeah, I'm trying my hand at screenwriting now.
Yeah.
So I've written a short and have ideas for a feature. And I'm also working, dabbling in doing a pilot for a television drama, working with someone on that. Okay. So, I think you have these stories and these ideas, and they can take any form, whether it be playwriting, a book, or a movie. I think the same ideas I have for plays, I can also transfer them to screenwriting as well. So I didn't know that I would go that route. And again, it's the same arc. You're using the same arc as in playwriting. It's just in a short, it's much shorter. But then in a feature length, it's a lot longer. But so I guess I'm developing, moving and transferring into another writing genre, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that Mike said he's just going to jump in there. So Mike, have you jumped into a talent that you stumbled across?
I think we lost him.
We lost him.
Oh, we lost him. Okay.
Go ahead, Howard.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm also doing some screenwriting now. For me, things just kind of happen kind of organically. The universe just creates opportunities. It doesn't, not before the opportunities come, and you just got to kind of be open and go with the flow. One of my plays, which Mike was in, and also later we developed it into a audio drama, and we did 2 seasons of that, called The Jade City Pharaoh. And how that became a radio serial was after the play one night. Frank Stasio, who has a show on the NPR station, said, you ever thought about turning this into a radio serial? And so then I began writing audio drama.
Okay.
And then as far as the teaching thing, hey, you've been doing this for a while. You think you can
right.
Teach?
Right.
You gotta check.
You can educate some.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like the opportunities. The first screenplay I wrote was really, really bad, but it was an opportunity. The person asked me, we would like for you to write this. This was maybe 15 years ago. And, I didn't say I've never written a movie before. I said, sure. I went back to write a movie days and wrote a script. We ain't going to talk about that script. I've learned. So for me, I think, and this is kind of what Melba was saying. I think the art of storytelling. I always say I come from storytellers. My grandmother, my aunt, I grew up, and there's a craft to telling a story. There's an art to it. And once you can tell the story, everything else is just a form,
Right.
That into the form. But if you don't have the elements of how to tell a story, it doesn't make a difference if it's a play, if it's a novel, if it's, and so it's that. And then it's just understanding the particulars of the particular form you're using. Like, if you're screenwriting, then, you're thinking about how to tell a story visually. Right. If you're writing a play, you're thinking about how to move this forward. Your main vehicle is dialogue. If it's a radio, that you're using, you know, the stage is the audience's mind. So how do you create, you know, conflict in the mind to use the mind as a stage rather than, you know, the limitations that you would have. And some things are closer to different forms. I think that, you know, writing a radio drama or even writing a screenplay is closer to writing a graphic novel than it is to writing a play.
Right.
You know, I think that, you know, writing a pilot is, or developing a television series is more related to writing a novel, you know, because you have characters over a long period of time.
Right.
One particular conflict that has to resolve one way or the other in 90 minutes or so. So, but it's all the basic elements of grandma, you know, telling you the story.
Right.
Yeah. Well, stole that apple pie. It's the same, you know, character, conflict, resolution, all of the elements are there. And I think that is something that, because as African Americans, we come out of such a strong storytelling culture. It's just a matter of learning, you know, a particular form. And, you know, and you can learn anything if you have a desire to learn it.
Right. You might want to repeat your question to Mike because he wasn't on.
Mike, we lost you. What happened?
Yeah.
Spectrum.
No.
Spectrum funny.
Technical problems, right?
Spectrum. All right. So the question that that I was asking earlier was that, you know, it seemed like everybody has a similar background. You know, they started out in one particular area and then they have found, you know, their talent or a hidden talent, you know, in another area. So is there any other hidden talents that you have discovered during your journey that you know, just jump into it?
Well, you know, popping and locking is something I've been really trying to
Show us.
Right. A live performance.
Our crowd knows I'm lying. Okay, so for me, because my plays are kind of cinematic, you know, I write them because growing up, I didn't see plays growing up. I saw movies growing up, you know, and so I come from a world of going to see, you know, a matinee on a Sunday afternoon after church, or, you know, that, or then getting into high school and going on a Saturday afternoon. Never, not really going to see plays per se, even though I acted in plays in high school and so on and so forth. But that just wasn't something that we did in my family or my community. We wasn't, you know, it didn't seem like a place that was necessarily welcome to us, or welcoming to us. So when I write in a way that I see movies, and the way that movies sort of unfold in front of us in that way. And really, I've always wanted to direct film. And so,
me too.
You know, because I write my own work, and then oftentimes I'm in my own work, and then I've written ensemble plays as well, but oftentimes I'm in my own work. So in doing that, I'm sort of toying with the idea of directing through all of that, because I have an eye and for what I want, and I put it as much as I can down on the page. In fact, often a director will look at me after reading the script and say, "This is going to be interesting putting this on stage." But, you know, it always manages to work out really, really amazingly, to really the credit of the director, because it's not easy putting some of the things that I imagine and envision on stage. But my hope now is, as I'm getting older and sometimes too old to play some of the characters that I wish that I could play. So I want to explore the world of directing films. And because I know some, you know, really great writers, Howard Kraft, I know that there's always going to be, you know, and you know,
Howard.
I mean, now I know Melda.
And Melda,
I have friends that are making work that I could actually put on film and direct. So that's what I'm hoping
You know, the three of y'all together would be something awesome. And to further talk about what you were just talking about, my background, I had 20-year career in broadcast television and doing documentaries. And when I got into theater, and I started seeing that difference is that you do have to have dialogue. And now when I read other people's plays, especially young playwrights, I have to tell them, this sounds like a film. This doesn't sound like a stage play, because a stage play has to have the dialogue on it. So my question, without me going on, is where do you guys get your stories from and your inspiration for your stories? And I want to go to Melda first, because I just happened to peek at some stuff on your website. When that one monologue that y'all did when you were on TV and
Oh, yeah.
did that monologue, that's some deep stuff. And I can't wait to finish this play. So where do you get your vision from?
So that was in Pittsburgh when they did a production of From Poor Society. And
Right.
so a lot of it is, you know, and I think Mike and Howard spoke to this, it's the culture and tradition in which we grew up. And so I remember listening to the older folks talking when I should have been probably outside playing. I'm listening. I like to sit at their feet, if you will. And so that history, those traditions, that universal language that we as Black people have, that has inspired a lot of my writing. Like, my writing is seeped in the Black experience, particularly Black women, as a Black woman. And so I like to write about their strengths, their accomplishments, their traditions, language, rhythm, etc. And so I think I'm inspired by that, and then how it manifests itself in life today. So, like, for instance, with my first play, again, I was inspired by this history of electing the first Black president. And even beyond that, what did it mean for Black people? And so, you know, I just take, like I said, rip it from the headlines. And also what was happening in Chicago at that time. Emmett Teal, where he's buried in Chicago, there was a scandal at the cemetery. So, you know, you're taking this sacred act of burial for us, and what that means and how anyone in the Black community would feel about that, juxtaposed with this election of this Black man and how we would feel about that. And so I'm inspired by our people. I'm inspired by what we experience, what we have experienced, and just remembering the stories. You know, I like to recreate the stories. I love to listen to stories. I love to recreate them. So that's probably, that's the catalyst for my inspiration.
So, you know, the play, I'm sorry, was it 30?
30 is, well, not the most recent, it's my third one, yes.
Okay, so can you explain that a little bit more, share that with us?
So 30 is like a generational play for Black women. It's looking at the generation of 3 generations of Black women, and they're all related. So again, I was inspired by the story of my grandmother, my great-grandmother, who lived in a nursing home when she came from Mississippi. She lived with her sister for a while, and then she was moved into a nursing home. My mother, my mother's sister, and my first cousin took care of her. They had a scheduled routine. They would go to the nursing home once a week. Each one of them had their own weekends, and I had to go. I was about 8 or 9. My mom would drag me with her. And so 30 is based on that experience. And that's a universal experience in our community. You know, not as much now, but we used to, our older generation, we were in nursing homes. And then you would see the family going to visit them and keeping them included and, you know, taking them out of the nursing home and making them part of the family. So 30 is about that type of family dynamic in the Black community, and with a little scandal in there. You gotta have scandal. And so that's essentially what it is. And I wanted to do a period piece, so it's set in the 70s. Yeah.
You know, I like that, and it's interesting because as you was talking about that, it made me think about let's say my mother's side, when I saw that my mother was taking care of her mom, and then before then, for my great-grandmother, you know, they both, my mother and my grandmother, was taking care of my great-grandmother. And so even for me, when my mother she's no longer here, I felt compelled, like, hey, I cannot take, you know, let's say my mother to the nursing home and just whatever. It's like a generational thing. Like, I had to go take care of her. And I actually moved, you know, my mother in with me. but I did, like you said, I brought my daughter, and I have a son too. So they saw me, you know what I mean? As we go and take care of.
Exactly. Exactly. And
I get it.
and that's what 30 is about. That exact, see, she and I share that same experience. Exactly.
That same experience, right.
Yeah.
And Mike, will you talk to us about your inspiration for Emmett Teal? It's been told so many ways.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I just wanted to piggyback before I answer your question. I just wanted to piggyback on what you all were saying, because there are a lot of nations of cultures that look at the U.S. and the amount of nursing homes that we have here, and they're amazed,
right?
Because in so many other cultures, the parents, right? The parents come to live.
Okay, he's frozen.
With.
Okay. Okay. If we can move on to Howard.
Their children, right? Their parents are taking.
Okay.
By the children in the same way that the children were taking care of the parents, and so they look at our society.
We're losing you, Mike.
Let me. I'll be right back. I'm gonna.
Okay.
Are you on Teddy Riley's Wi-Fi? Like we can't have this today.
So we'll let Mike come back. Howard, talk about the miraculous ending mundane. That play. Talk about it for us for a minute, and what the inspiration was in writing that play.
Initially, that I was writing that series for Central about healthcare disparity.
Exactly.
And
I was a part of that.
Yeah. So the original was a piece that I wrote for Central. It was a little different. It was a lot different actually, but that's where the idea of dealing with Alzheimer's came from.
Right.
And then which they never produced that play, which was amazing to me because they paid me for it, and I got the most out of the whole series for the last play. But I think that's after somebody else became head of the biology side of it or whatever. So
gotcha.
They never did it. So it was just sitting, and I wanted to write a piece to celebrate my my uncles, these guys who, came back from Vietnam, they're entering their 70s now, and they're entering a different stage of their life. These guys who would, cuss you out for walking on the grass and then send you
right.
to help you way out, those kind of guys. And so I wanted to deal with, write something to them and capture the, I think we don't see a lot of our stories. We don't see a lot of the love that exists between Black
exactly
men with regards to friendship and brotherhood and that whole thing. So I wanted to explore that through these older characters, and at the same time, get a glimpse at, how when you have a shift in the power dynamic of a family, how families deal with that shift. And how people deal with accepting things that they don't want to accept. And, it also gave me an opportunity. One of the things that I love about, I think why I've gravitated towards playwriting is I hear my characters before I see them. I can tell you what the character says and how they're going to sound before I can tell you exactly how they look.
Right.
And so being able to write the dialogue of my uncles, the things they say that make absolutely sense will make all the sense in the world when they say them. Like, you might say,
exactly.
I don't give a fat baby's ass about that.
Sound like him.
But you know exactly what it means.
Right.
To really capture some of that language. For me as a playwright, as a writer in general, I'm inspired by a lot of writers all across the board. But I think my style how I approach dialogue comes a lot from Richard Pryor and the genius.
Oh yeah.
Right. And the idea that you are busting out laughing and it's hilarious, and then when you sit back and think about what the joke is, you understand that it's really not that funny. It's really a deep social commentary. And so that's something I try to strive for in my approach to how I tell my stories. And so that was the inspiration for the Miraculous.
But you know what? You hit a home run when you got Lakeisha Coffee to play in your play, man.
Yeah, everything.
That girl is something, man. What an actress.
She is, you know, by far one of the most incredible and most versatile actresses that I have ever worked with. And she never forgets to remind me, she auditioned for one of the plays we did at Central and
Right.
And she never lets me let. I said, I ain't had nothing to do with it. Karen,
Right.
Karen don't play that. You know, so, but yeah, she is truly a gem for this area, and that's what's so sad about, among many things that's so sad about this COVID. You know, she had some opportunities, like a lot of other artists that were getting ready to happen, and then this happened, and everything got shut down, and so. But yeah, it's been you know, she's been in several of my pieces and my best pieces, in my opinion. And with Mike in the whole Jade City from the play, we brought her over to the radio. She also played, you know, I created a whole character just for her.
Right.
You could have her in the radio serial. But yeah, she's amazing. So if you do something on actresses, you definitely want to make sure you get Lakeisha.
Oh yeah, well I directed her a long time ago now, back in 2005, you know.
Okay.
So we know each other. So Mike, come on with Emmett, since you're back.
So, you know, speaking of 2005, that's when I did the research for it.
Okay.
Called, you know, Darhy, the Lynching of Emmett Till. And at that time, you know, that was the 50th anniversary of his murder, and yet, and still in 2005, there were not it wasn't really a plethora of books about Emmett, and so most of my research had to be done through newspaper accounts.
Right.
And because I had this idea of a documentary film in my head,
yes,
I wanted to write it from that modality. I wanted to find a way to make the audience feel like they were watching it, and not only watching it from a number of perspectives, but also involved from a number of perspectives, having, you know, William Bradford Huey, who was a white journalist who interviewed for Look magazine and a number of other magazines. He was, you know, Southern and really kind of looking for a payday is what he was looking for at the end of the day. But having the play initially start off with him from his perspective, and then moving from there with the feeling of, oh, everybody is being interviewed by William Bradford Huey, and so therefore it makes the direct address to the audience work. It makes those moments that we might not have been privy to because they were private moments. It makes those work because it feels like it's inside of someone's head and they're retelling the story or the experience. And I really wanted to honestly share the story of Emmett Till, because at that time, right, if you look at 2005 and before 2005, with your mind back then, you have to realize that Emmett Till was a story that was slowly being lost, right? You can't look at it with your 2020 perspective, and Black Lives Matter, and how the story has come back and been paralleled and told a number of times. You look at it in 2005, and then when I premiered it in 2006, you know, this was a story that was definitely feeling kind of new to white people, even white people that were living back then. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not know this story existed, which is a tragedy, right? And then the young people, because I wrote it, and I write all my plays so that a young audience, audiences of all ages can see them, appreciate them, learn from them. So taking that play into schools and communities, and having, even when I opened it, having parents bring their small children. I didn't realize 8-year-olds would be brought to the show, but when I would talk to those parents after the show, I would realize, oh, it's just like those parents who kept that Jet magazine with that picture of Emmett, showing them that picture, telling them that this is in essence a cautionary tale, and you need to remember this story for the rest of your life. That's why those parents would bring their young children to see that play. And it became the play itself. As I started touring it around, it became, and the story became more and more known again, let's say, because it truly was the spark that lit the civil rights movement. So as the story became known and known again, people would come and they would stand up and they would testify about their experiences. They would talk about their lives in the civil rights movement, or their relationship to the story of Emmett Till and where they were when they found out about it. So it really does become a play that's storytelling, but then ask for storytelling afterwards. That kind of that church tradition that we have in the Black community, where there is a sermon, but then other people have an opportunity to testify after they hear the sermon.
You know, I think it's so amazing for all of you when you are starting with your playwright. It's still like in the storytelling phase, I guess, because these are stories that we don't typically hear every day. And like you were saying, Mike, that sometimes these stories get lost, you know. So for these, you know, performances to come to stage, or whether it's radio or screenplay, I think it is so important. Even though everything that's going on now with the Black Lives Movement, we're starting to hear more and more about what was really going on, that people was trying to bury these stories. But we need to know these things because it's not being taught, you know, of course, in the school systems. It's not being taught in our community. But it's unfortunate that, you know, situations like now where we're hearing about these stories, you know, I think it is unfortunate, but I'm glad that we're able to hear them. So with COVID going on, and, you know, we have, you know, the protesting, Black Lives Movement, all of these things happen. What are you guys doing during this time?
I am struggling to figure it out, right? Like
me too.
Like, you know, as an actor and a playwright, with no one going into audiences, you know, and no one going into an audit and a theater in the foreseeable future. I have done my best to try and be pragmatic about what the future could hold. You know, I'm not trying to think. I'm trying to be hopeful, but I'm also being pragmatic about it. So, therefore, this past Friday, I shot or filmed my one of my plays. I have 8 titles that I need to put on video, because if schools aren't going to happen, and community theater's not going to happen, colleges, all the places that I would normally go into to perform, and best case scenario, I'm a solo actor. I don't travel with anyone except for a production manager, and when Howard and I work together, it's just he and I. So that's best case scenario, going into a place and it just being myself or a couple of other folks. There are folks out there that are ensembles, that are whole dance troupes that, that cannot do this, that cannot figure out a way to make this happen because of quarantine conditions, because of the population, the amount of people that you can have in one space at once, and so on and so forth. So for me, I am trying to record virtually each one of the productions that I do, so that when a venue reaches out to me to say, we can't have you in our space, can you come in virtually? Well, yes, yes, I can. So I'm trying to look towards the future. It's not something that I want to do, and I'm kind of dragging myself toward it, kicking and screaming, because I'm a big believer in the relationships that the actor and the writer make with the live audience, and that give and take that happens there, and the learning and the Q&A that follows it. So it's a tough thing to do, but it's a necessary thing, because we got to eat.
Absolutely.
And so, like Mike, I guess I'm preparing too. However, right before COVID, I was hired for a commission with the Ensemble Theater in Houston, Texas. And so in February, I was there interviewing the family that the play is about. And then right after that, when I got back in March, is when everything shut down. So over COVID, I've just been working on that commission. I actually finished the draft about a week ago. So I've been preparing and writing for the day that we will be able to go back into the space and start to watch live theater again. So I'm just writing. I really have been immersing myself in writing. And I've been doing a lot of Zoom virtual readings. I've had two done of my plays. And right before this, I was telling Kenneth, right before we met, I had just finished listening to a reading from a theater in New York. They did a reading of Greenwood. So I spent a lot of time creating my own story, supporting other artists over Zoom, talking, doing panels like this. I've done several of these to talk about theater and the state of theater and what we're doing, maybe to inspire someone. So I'm just, trying to immerse myself in writing when I feel like it. And I think because this time is so unnerving for all of us, there's so much going on that there are some days I don't have the energy or the motivation to write, because I'm in my feelings about whatever's happening, And I know we should write through our feelings. And I know there's going to be a lot of pandemic stories coming out of this, especially with everything that's happening with Black Lives Matter as well. And I've been thinking about that too, but I don't want to write something because I feel like I should, based on what's happening now. I want to be led to do it. And I like to come at things at a different angle too as well. So I've been contemplating how that will start to mix into the type of works that I do as well.
Awesome.
Howard?
I've been kind of like Mike and Melda as well. It's been the first part of it has been very creative, and I got some opportunities that may materialize, but COVID has, in terms of turning some scripts into actual screenplays, but COVID has kind of slowed up the momentum on both of those projects. But thinking about, what are things going to look like, in the next year or so. I do believe that theater will come back, but it may be a year, and so, or maybe a little longer. So then how do you survive during that time, and then how do you make sure that you're prepared when the time is over, because it will end. I kind of look at it like the token, the two towers, when Gandalf tells him at dawn, look to the east, You know, so when God come, you got to be ready to look so you can head out, right? So this is preparation time for when it's time to look to the east. So I've been trying to use the time, you know, in that way, revisiting texts on, you know, technique, you know, things of that nature, looking at you know, what's the next story to tell, and you know, what stories can be developed into you know, to be streamed or you know, shot virtually. And you know, one of the blessings that I think we have by being writers is that you know, the bad side, of course, is that the theaters are closed. The upside is that everyone is looking for content because everyone's at home. This is probably the most richest opportunity for Black writers in a long time. To when have you ever seen Netflix have a Black Lives Matter section?
Right.
You know, most people, you know, we have Black film, right?
I think
That's
Hulu
right.
was like that too.
Yeah, and that's not going to stop with all the protests and all the in the market. You know, I don't think FedEx and you know, whoever else boycotted the Redskins because they just felt they was just wrong. They've been calling them, you know, using that derogatory term for 50 years.
That's right.
Looking different now, you know. And so they know that, you know, Black people watch, you know, we stream, we watch stuff. People want to see our stories. And so I think as writers, it's a really good opportunity for us to create work that probably wouldn't have gotten done 5 years ago, that, you know, and there's so many platforms, you know, available and open, as well as, you know, now there's also a big opportunity with audio drama because of cell phones and, you know, people listening to podcasts. So there's a lot of opportunity for writers listening to be a little flexible and learn some different forms. That, you know, some of our, you know, other counterparts in theater, you know, unfortunately, it's going to hurt them a whole lot harder because, you know, they can only do so much of what they do is dependent on what other people do. You know, which is one of the things I really admire about Mike is, you know, and Mike is a very good playwright too. He doesn't really talk that up. You know, he likes to talk that.
I know he is.
He's a hell of a playwright. But the fact that, you know, he can create his own work gives him ability to survive this in, you know, a way that other actors that are majorly based in the theater are just not being able to do it because they can't create, you know, that opportunity to create their own work. So, you know, I think this is it's a rough time, but at the same time, it's a time that offers a lot of opportunity if we use it productively. You know, we're ready to come out like the hobbits and them, you know, when the east and the sun come up like Gandalf and ride out, you know, we can ride out, Mike Wiley.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So
sounds like there's gonna be a meeting there after.
You know, as
I've been watching TBS, right? Lord of the Rings about 1,000 times a week.
Sure do. Lord of the Rings and Shawshank.
But you know, as a playwright myself, I've got 2 plays I'm writing. I'm writing a 1-act and I'm writing a full-length play. But on top of that, I'm reading plays. I got to read for Agape because we canceled this season and now we got to look for plays for next season. So I got to read Melda's play. I got to read House of George, right? I still got to get that to me, and I got to read Mike's play. So maybe, you know, during this time, we can collaborate. But then again, all of us are teachers too. Every last one of us are teachers. And then we got a plan for the semester, whether it's online or whether it's face-to-face. Somebody talked about going in and just having 9 students in there separated, and we have that little guard on and
oh my God, yes.
But I'm going to be doing three online. So I don't know.
In my class right now.
But I want to get this question.
I was going to say, I like the Picasso in the back.
Oh, thank you. Listen, I got to get this question out because this is one that everybody needs to deal with. What does it mean to be a Black playwright in a white world? And you guys have been hitting on this with all these stories. You know, let me just say this. I've been invited on these panels where I'm the only Black, director or only Black playwright, and they don't get it, that you don't tell our stories. That's why I created Agape like Mike. I created Agape Theatre Project so I can tell our stories. Yeah. And people, most of the actors in town know me, and I'll put them on stage and we tell stories. So my question is, what is it like to be a Black playwright in the white world?
Yeah.
It's, again, it's part of the reason that I started doing, performing in my own work, finding ways to present my own work that didn't depend on white producers, because white producers so often are looking for either what's safe or what's going to make some money, what's going to, and I don't know if they necessarily are thinking it when they program it, but sometimes some of the stuff that gets programmed is coonery to a degree. I'm just going to say that. And we've all seen that. We've all experienced that. I think that that often white producers are looking for, they're not necessarily looking for the next best thing. They're looking for what somebody told them was good, and they might not necessarily read the play, but they saw that it was produced at this place and this place. And so instead of doing their due diligence and finding other, being of the kind of mind that will go out there and find, or just open their eyes and see that there are the Meldas or the Howard Crafts of the world, the Kenneths of the world. Right. No, they're just going to keep going to that same playwright that they've heard is safe, or they've experienced that is safe. And so that playwright keeps getting that particular work or that particular story done when we, as a people, right, Black people, we are Baskin and Robbins, right? We have so many stories to tell.
Yes,
we are culturally from so many different places and do so many things and have so many stories to tell, and yet we continue to see the same story more often than not, the same story told over and over.
Yeah, I have not had my work done in any white theaters yet. And that's okay with me. I remember when I was starting out, I was chasing them. I admit I was chasing them. I was writing them, sending stuff, trying to go to all their productions to show my face and maybe volunteer, And then I got love from Black theaters. And I mean, and that has been enough, and that has been sufficient for me. And now I'm getting calls from Black theaters that I had not even heard of. And I don't think that would have happened if I hadn't let go of that need or whatever I felt I needed from the white theaters, because that's where my focus was. Let me get my play here. Let me get my play there. Would I turn it down? Not necessarily, but I'm not chasing. I thought I had to do that. And I don't feel that way anymore. And so there's a lot of good work being done in Black theaters. There's exceptional work being done, and I feel comfortable with my voice and my work there. I feel like it's celebrated. I feel like it's nurtured there. It's appreciated there as well. And it
was a sellout. It was a sellout at the National Black Theater Festival.
Thank God for that. It was.
It ate it up.
It was, and there were whites and Blacks who came to support. So
multicultural.
Very, very much so. And even when I've had my plays at Black theaters, there are whites who attend as well. And so I'm fine with that. But I'm at the place now where I don't feel like I need to be validated by white theaters at all.
Right.
I don't feel that, again, I would like for my works to be appreciated by whomever wants to see them and learn from them. But I think my focus now is getting into as many Black theaters and as many communities as I can.
Very good.
How about you, Mr. Howard?
That's a really good question. you know, this is going to sound crazy, but just follow me down the rabbit hole, if you will. I don't think of myself as a Black playwright the same way that a white playwright doesn't think of themselves as a white playwright. Now, saying that, I am obviously a Black playwright because I write from the experience from which I live. But that also means that I am a human being. So even though I am writing about the experience that I live, the Black experience, that experience is as universal as on a human level as a white playwright who writes about their white experience. Though we don't call that a white experience, we call that their human experience, right? So I want to be clear here, because what I'm not trying to say is that, you know, my work is, you know, above race and it reaches to, you know, no, not at all. I write from my experience, and as the experience of a Black man in America, right? And that story is universal in the way that any story of a human being in this world is universal, because they are human experiencing that humanity under a particular set of conditions and how that plays out. So, you know, so I say that to say that, you know, I consider myself to be a child of the Black arts movement. You know, that's the main movement that I learned, and that is in with regards to writing work to raise the consciousness and awareness in the community. Now that said, I never go into a play saying these are the lessons I want to teach. I go into a script to tell a story.
Right.
And what I come out of is that experience that is going to raise the level of consciousness, because that's what I'm brought up on.
Right.
Like if you take, and this is a different genre, if you take Hemingway, you're going to get a very misogynistic white male experience, because that's what he comes out of. We're not going to call it that. We're going to call it universal, and everyone should read it.
Right.
But that's what it is.
Yeah.
I think it was Barker who said that, you know, Shakespeare, when you break Shakespeare down to the bare essence, he's a British nationalist.
Right.
You know, when you think about the subject matter of his plays and how I play, that's exactly. So he's writing out of that experience. So I say that in terms, I know a lot of times people want to, particularly with Black artists, they want to find a way to put them in a box, you know, and say that, you know, what they're doing is something different than anybody else is doing, because it's the same thing. It's just, it's not the same thing and what it comes out of, but the same universal lessons are there that are in your work. So don't try to act like our work is a subset of theater, is a subset of the human condition. It is not. And yours is not to be held in any higher esteem, because it is not. It is all a human experience under a certain in a certain cauldron of existence, for lack of a better way of
you preach, man.
But yeah, I just don't want to get that, you know, get that confused. Because that's what I see, you know, when I look at, you know, name me any writer in the English language that's better than James Baldwin. Name one.
Or Mira Baraka.
Who has a better language than the English language? But they always want to act like he's writing a different kind of English.
Right.
You know, we don't look at him, you know, when we're studying African. No, he's one of the best writers this country, period. And y'all need to get with that, coming out of his experience.
Right.
And so that's kind of where I come with it. As far as chasing theaters, I think I'm the luckiest playwright in the world, because, you know, everything I've written has been produced on some level. And that's coming out of, you know, that great start with Karen, and then, you know, work crossing over. I sent the play Miraculous in the Mundane. We sent it to on just, now this is, you know, to get back to being a Black playwright in a white world, I think it's this. Now this is definitely what you're dealing with, which is no different than what most Black people are dealing with in their profession, is that we don't control enough of the levers of power in it. And so you're always dealing with it from that perspective. And you ask yourself, you know, white playwrights don't have to deal with, you know, am I not getting this opportunity because my work doesn't stand up, or am I not getting this opportunity because they've already chosen the Black playwright they're going to do this? You know?
Right.
Us in this position of, you know, fighting against each other. You know, if they decide, okay, we're going to do Black transgender plays this year, So, you know, all that, or we're going to just do black male plays this year, or this is the year we're going to, you know, they never do. White art don't have to deal with that. You know, that stuff
They don't.
doesn't get done. You know, our stuff is always, you know, how many weeks do we have during February? You know, and that creates, you know, that tries to put us against each other. And this, you know, fight to be the black playwright, you know, that's going to get their work done, that's going to break through. But, you know, for me, you know, I think this is something, if you are a playwright, if you're an artist, you know, you don't do this because you're trying to get paid. Because if you are, you're ignorant. You never, you know, I mean, you do this, you hope you'll get paid. Me and Mike Wiley have that we go by. GTP, get that paper because we got to get it. We got these kids and wives and stuff. You know, but that's not why we do it. You know, we do it because if we didn't, you know, we would be plunging ink pens in our eyes. It's who we are. It's what God made us to be. And so with that in mind, I just try to put work out. I just try to put work out, and the universe will do with it what it will. My job is to ask these questions and to put it out there. And so I just try to focus on that and, you know, to keep writing. I mean, because if you think about, you spend too much time thinking about who's going to feel this, you can't write for that. You know, you can't. You know, what I was saying about Memphis, we sent Miraculous in the Money. You saw that. That's a blackety-black play. You don't get no blackety. And a
lot of white audience saw that play too, and they loved it.
They love it. They loved it. I don't write it, but, you know, I just tell the story. But they love that play because the play is universal. You know, it's universal. It's about humans dealing with, you know, that kind of trauma, that kind of trauma. And if I can appreciate that story, if it's, you know, a white couple in Wisconsin and the story's about them, why can't I appreciate that story if it's happening in the black community in Durham, North Carolina? You know, because it's the same situation. You know, it's just a different cultural experience dealing with the situation.
And you know, Mike has been emceeing at Raleigh Little Theater the previews, and I had a chance to have one of my plays in every time they did. You know, we do a little preview of each company. And a lot of the white patrons that come to my play said they saw it there. And Mike does a wonderful job. You want to talk about that just for a second? We only got a couple more, few minutes left, but.
You're talking about the Black Theater preview that they do each. Well, I think that that you are getting me mixed up with. I forget the brother's name. That lives in Raleigh, but he's a handsome cat. So you know, I'm not.
So I thought it was you, but
I'm not mad at you.
Okay, thank you.
Jam.
I'm sorry, my bad. I had this question down. And,
no, but you know what? I wanted to piggyback on what Howard just said, if I may, because I really think that it's important to also, in addition to, if we're going to talk about white producers, we must talk about white reviewers and journalists that come and see our shows and do not take the time to open their minds, their hearts culturally, to understand, to see themselves in the piece. They just dismiss it as something that they might not be able to get into just because they're not Black, when we as a people have been going to their work and seeing ourselves in their work for generations. They need to do the same, or we need to have more Black people, more Black journalists, more Black reviewers coming to see our work, or being asked to review our work, so that our work isn't being dismissed simply because a white journalist has deemed it a piece that that it's a lived experience that they haven't had, which is ridiculous.
Okay. Well, I definitely want to say thank you for everyone to be a part of this theater talk on today. It has been very insightful. I learned so much. I mean, I'm not a playwright, but it makes me want to go and read some things. To be honest with you, it's like, wow, all this talent. I mean, it is truly amazing. And I appreciate each and every one of you for everything that you're doing, from the novels to the screenwriting, playwriting, storytelling. Please keep that going. Please keep us who are not part of that informed of, you know, everything that has transpired that we just wasn't educated on or have not yet seen.
Michelle, we got one more question. Remember, we always end with what advice they have for upcoming writers. That's a good one, right?
Yep.
I know, so I wish someone had told me to get out there, well, when it's safe to do so. Network, that's really important when you're trying to make those connections, because you can send your play to all the theaters in the world, and if they don't know you, they won't read it. And I had to learn that the hard way. It's really who you know oftentimes, and so you build those relationships. And if you can, any way you can do that, try to build the relationships, you know, go to the festivals, go to the conferences, support other playwrights' work. That's important too, to help you to make those connections and build that community so that you can get your work out there and write.
I just would piggyback off of what Melda said. I mean, that's the 100% gospel right there. In terms of everything she said, but definitely the networking. And that's something that I didn't realize early on. I was very fortunate. I got a lot of my stuff done locally and had a lot of support locally, but I could have moved a lot faster if I understood that so much is about the connections you make and who you know. And you have connections that you don't even think you have, you know, and you know, real shortly, Freight was the play that made it off Broadway. And that's the best play I wrote, but that's not why it made it off Broadway. It made it off Broadway because the light designer in Chapel Hill worked with Woody King, and she sent Woody King the play.
Right.
Woody read it because he didn't know who I was, but he knew who Kathy Perkins was. So he said, I'll read the brother's play. And that was my opportunity. And so much is about, you know, those contacts, and we have them. You just have to think and be creative about, you know, it could be like, who went to church with whose cousin at that wedding, knows somebody that works at the National Black Theater Festival. Let me get them, you know, so we really have to do that. And I think that's a good lesson, especially as African Americans, to understand our power as a group and, you know, the 6 degrees of separation, and being able to network with each other and help each other out to push the work. And then the other thing I would say is exactly what Melda said. You got to write. You know, you got to write. And understanding that, in my opinion, playwriting is not a destination, it's a journey. You know, the journey never ends. You know, on your last day, you should be trying to write your last great line of dialogue. And if you keep that, you know, if you make it about what is the best, what is the highest of your potential that you can reach, and you focus on that, then your work will continue to get better and better. And so you just strive every day to be a better, what have you done for your, try to do, that's the last thing I say on it, try to do something for your writing every day. You know, if it's reading theory about, you know, the work, if it's reading plays, reading, you know, watching film, journaling, whatever, every day, be able to, when you go to bed, to say, I did this for my writing today. And if you do that, I think you continue to get better and better. And the thing I'm most proud of about myself is that I'm a better playwright in 2020 than I was in 2000, right? And hopefully my goal is to be a better playwright in 2021 than I was in 2020. And you make it about your own path and what you can be and what you can manifest. And are you writing to the top of that? Hey, don't get sidetracked by what other people are doing, and be happy for them. You know, don't get into the hating game. Oh man, I wish I had that option. I wish that could have been me. Why, you know, because that drains, that pulls away from the creative energy. You know, just be happy for that person. And when it's your time to shine, you know, sometimes other people get so caught up in the shine that other people are getting. When it's their time to shine, they can't even turn their light on. You know, they done ran out all their battery.
Right.
You know, worried about hating on the next man or woman. So,
and you don't know that playwright's journey to get where they are too.
Exactly
right.
You don't know.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Absolutely. And I just want to add that, you know, I agree with everything that has been said thus far, especially honing your craft, right? Honing your craft, honing your craft, honing your craft, sharpening the saw, as that whatever that famous book was a few years ago, just always constantly sharpening the saw. And I will tell you that I learned more about playwriting from Howard Kraft than any other, because I'm constantly asking him questions about structure, about any number of things. So I learned so much from Howard. I learned so much from other playwrights in reading, but not just reading, and asking questions about the books they might be reading. Never be afraid to ask those questions again, to sharpen the saw and hone your craft. And the second thing I will say comes out of my own experience, and that is diversity. And what I mean by diversity, I mean is diversify. Not you know, there is the concept of, yes, staying in your lane. Yes, there is the concept of doing that, but at the same time, an artist is an artist is an artist. Something you asked just a little bit ago, Michelle, about any other things that we are trying. Years ago, a good friend who has since passed, but at the time he was in the hospital, he was dying of cancer, and I told him that I was interested in learning how to play an instrument, because he had taught several notable people how to play an instrument. And he looked at me, and he was kind of weak, but he said, "Well, you're an artist, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, then do it." An artist is an artist is an artist. If you're willing to explore it, willing to learn it, willing to put the time in, then you should be able to do it. Again, going back to Howard will say, "Yeah, I'm working on this this period piece right now, but then I'm going to work on this Western, and then I'm going to work on this." Always diversify, right? Diversify your voice, and you won't go broke.
Well, you know what? We had a great discussion, and with three. I mean, when I went to you guys' website, I didn't know the depth and the breadth of each one of your work. I knew Howard, because Howard and I, we go back through the plays at NCCU. But Mike, y'all keep up the good work, and Melda, you know, will you continue to be success and shine in this world where we really need our African American or Black or playwrights to tell these stories. And as I told this young playwright, he was writing me, I says, you got to tell the story. You got to have a beginning, a middle, and the end, you know. It's got to say something. We need to know something about the characters so we can feel the characters, right? So we really appreciate it. And Michelle did her homework too. And so we really appreciate y'all coming on and making this a great Theater Talk Live. This is episode 5.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
You're welcome. Any parting words, Michelle? Already said it.
No, I think you've said it all.
Okay.
I appreciate you guys, honestly. You guys continue to do amazing things.
Yes. So good night, everybody, and see you next week on Theater Talk Live, Agape Theatre Project. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good night.
Nice meeting you all.